So, ladies and gentlemen, what in the I endorse raping is going on? So, you guys know I love all types of mythology. I always kind of have them in equal regard in my mind. So, I enjoy Greek mythology. I love the stories. In fact, Greek myths kind of got me into mythology. But there is a disturbing element of Greek mythology that I think we can talk about pretty easily, and that's the concept of grape in mythology. We know what the word actually intends, what we're talking about. This is a post here where we're talking about the relationship with Hades and the woman that would become his wife, which was Persephone. And the story, as I understood it, was that she was this young virginal girl out in the field one day, and he kidnapped her and took her back to the underworld. He stole his young wife. Now, because she had eaten a bit of pomegranate while she was in the underworld, that bound her to the underworld. So while her mother, who was the goddess of the harvest, was angry and sad when she was gone, she was forced to live 6 months in the underworld and come back to the surface for the rest of the year, which is why we have the seasons. It's a Greek explanation of the seasons. An interesting myth because other mythologies and civilizations develop very different sources of that seasonal change. If you go to Sumerian myth, it's linked to Demuzit and him having to go to the underworld for 6 months and then come back. But he was not raped, he was not kidnapped. He was paying a cost for something Inanna had done. So this is an element about Greek mythology, at least, or their culture, where the gods or deities interact with humans on a very personal level, very much sexually, which is why they produce demigods. If you go to Kemetic or North African belief systems, we don't see that. We don't see stories of Asar or Set coming down to Earth and having relations with human women producing children. No incidents of raping going on there. I think Set tried to rape Heru. That was a domination thing, right? We understand that component of it. But the heads of the Greek pantheon, Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, all have great charges against them, right? Athena, Medusa is one of the most famous stories, who worked down there at Athena's temple and was raped by Poseidon. Leto was raped, but Zeus hid himself as I think it was a golden shower, raped Leto. He also raped his own wife Hera. This is how she became his wife. He seduced her. He knew she had a love for animals and ultimately seduced her. But there's countless tales of how Zeus made his children. So this story about this young girl ultimately being kidnapped, the first thing this gentleman wants to do is to qualify why it's okay. And what his response to me was that, well, Zeus had given um, Hades the rights to this girl, which is a very sick mentality. That this was not your daughter, this was a human, and I decree who owns you now and what they can do to you. And this young girl who was underage made no distinctions about that. She had no input. She was simply property, a victim. So that's one of the things about Greek mythology, at least, that I've always found very disturbing, and you don't see it in other cultures. If you read Norse or Germanic mythology, I have never run across any stories that indicate graping being such an okay. Like you can be a grapist and still go on and be revered as a hero. So it's something that's very specific to Greek mythology, why people choose to condone that. But I always point at that when I say what's the difference between what the Greeks believe or how they interpret it, and a lot of their beliefs came from the African belief system, was really in that interaction. You did not see Heru. I think there's one story where Aset, after she is impregnated by Asar and forced to flee, she's living among humans. But it's a very different tale. There were not the interactions. There were definitely not the personal interactions in the game of the mating. We hear that initially with the fallen angel story, right? That was the story of the fallen angels. They came down, they mated with women, they created the Nephilim based upon that. The Greeks use those stories oftentimes to create other creatures who were part divine, like the Minotaur, right? Was a product of the deities kind of messing around. Hercules is the same type of story. So, this idea that this mentality is okay is a little bit disturbing. Outside of that, obviously, the Greeks have a great wealth of history and knowledge that we can learn from Greek civilization, Greek culture. This is a component of something that they wrote in their mythologies I do not agree with. So you can be totally fine with the story about him kidnapped. First, she was an underage girl. She's an underage girl. How you skip over that whole part to say she was betrothed to someone outside of herself, to me, is kind of a sick mentality. I think that's a gross way to look at another human. And I think we tend to do that when we want to to take a stance. We want to support a side. We want to support zoos. We want to support. I've done a couple of videos about this, and this was just something that popped up today. So I wanted to respond so I could drop it here and drop it in my comments. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for stopping in. Please let me know your opinions.